Okay, there's been an awful lot of rubbish chess improvement tips such as this video that we're going to debunk systematically. Okay, here we go.
So, you want to get better at chess and you're tired of the same generic advice like analyze your games and do puzzles. A ton of puzzles. Yeah, puzzles are super important.
Puzzles can't really help you other than like figuring out whether a piece is like pinned or skewered, or you might see a couple forks here and there. You might see a couple tactics that are useful, but like for the most part in a real game, you're not gonna see a sacrifice mate like this. You might, but it's very rare. And a lot of the games a lot of the puzzles you see on chess.com it's not really that realistic for like a real game.
Important because they help you spot patterns and get faster at finding tactics. But they're not the only thing that'll level up your game. In this video, I've put together 8 strategies that helped me break 2000 on chess.
I'm pretty sure it's not actually 2000.
.com, and you can start using them right away to actually improve your play, whether you're just starting out or you've been stuck at the same rating for months. Building an opening repertoire. When you're starting to build an opening repertoire, you don't need to memorize every single line out there.
Yes, you do. You have to memorize everything. Yes, you have to memorize every single thing that's out there. Oh, God. Okay, let's... Okay, say for example, right? Like, here. Like, against e4, you might play e5. But then when your opponent plays knight to f3, you have to figure out a way to respond to that. You can play the Latvian Gambit. I would recommend playing the Latvian Gambit, by the way. Like, yeah, it's actually really good. Even if you don't play the Latvian Gambit and you go into a normal variation line like this, your opponent might play the Italian game in which you might respond like this, but your opponent might respond like this, and you have to be ready for that. Your opponent might play the fried liver, then you have to be ready to play the chuckster like this. Okay? Or your opponent might play the Ruy Lopez, in which... Oh, God. Or your opponent might play the Ruy Lopez, in which you have to be ready for that, too. And your opponent might play the anti-marshal, you have to be ready for that. I mean, if he plays the normal c3, then you already know what to do. You just play a marshal attack. Again, I memorized this religiously, so it's like pretty bread and butter opening. This is the most this is the most textbook opening of all time. The most textbook opening of all time. It's not the longest opening there is, but it's definitely the most textbook. Yeah, Queen h5. You have to be ready to play that. You might run into something like the Ponziani. What are you gonna do against the Ponziani? Okay, you're gonna play this. Okay, it's called Yanish counterattack. But let's say your opponent goes here, right? That's the main line. Now I have to go knight takes e4, and then he'll go d5. And then you need to know that the only move that works, you give up the knight entirely. Yeah, you have to know this stuff. Like, just out of e4, you have to know all this. Okay? And then against d4, right? You might play d5, but then they might play the Queen's Gambit. You have to be ready to play the Alban counter Gambit. And then, even if you play d5 and then he goes like this, now you have to be ready to play the Blue Mojito attack. Like, you remember this stuff? Remember this stuff? And then you need to get your pawn out here, fianchetto, not here, castle. Remember that opening I taught you just a moment ago? You gotta remember that, okay? And then even if you play this, you have to be ready for this, the Trompowsky. What are you going to do against the Trompowsky? You know, like, you have to be ready for that. Even if your opponent does play the Indian game, I mean, your opponent might play this, then you have to be ready to play the Gogos attack. Or your opponent might play this, to which you have to like be ready with, ready to meet with this. Right? Yeah, you have to know all this stuff. And then he castles, and then I'm pretty sure it's, yeah. Lichess calls it a Ronin timer of defense. It's actually called a Ronin timer of attack, by the way. Lichess got it wrong. Like, you have to know all this stuff. You have to know all this stuff. Oh, God. Stop.
Trying to cram all that info into your head will just mess you up. What I recommend is way simpler and actually works. Just prepare responses to the most common moves your opponent might play and stick to those. Playing the same lines over and over helps you build practical experience because you'll start recognizing familiar positions and know the right plans more naturally. As white, you've got a few options, like 1e3, 1g3, or
They're all terrible.
1c4, but the most popular openings are 1e4 and 1d4. Usually, 1e4 leads to more open games, while 1d4
Oh, e4, and e4 leads to tactical play. Okay, yay. I'm an attacking e4 player. I'm an attacking e4 player. Woohoo! I'm an attacking e4 player, so I'm going to play the Ruy Lopez. Yay! I'm going to attack. I'm going to attack. And then I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. Like, dude, like, dude, this is just closed, grindy, positional Ruy Lopez. Like, this isn't attacking at all. Oh, God.
leads to more open games, while 1d4 tends to create more positional setups.
Oh, I'm a boring d4 player. 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 Oh my goodness. I'm a boring d4 player. I'm a boring d4 player. Look at all of this tactics, and you look at all of this calculating stuff that you're gonna have to learn. Like, this is just not positional. You have a lot of attacking stuff to do here. Oh my god.
So try to go with an opening that fits your style. Let's say you...
Okay, also, nobody's gonna tell you this, okay? Nobody else is going to tell you this, so I have to like set the record straight, okay? Most of you will never realize this, but your best choice for an opening is not even a pawn move. You don't even touch your pawns until turn 2. You play this, okay? That's your best option. Forget everything else, just play this, okay? Why do I say that? Well, in the event that you run into a very strong opponent, you can actually transpose this into a Catalan. That's a d4 opening, but it started in knight to f3. You can also do something like this. This is called the Ross Gambit, and typically you can just take and then when he tries to do stuff, you just retreat and just do the normal thing. I'll explain that in a bit. But another way to refute this is to go here. And then he has to go here. And then you have this so-called Italian game that you desperately so wanted and what have you. So you can do stuff like this. Okay? It's just a very versatile opening. You can transpose it into an e4 opening. You can transpose it into a d4 opening. But the best way to play, the best two ways to play the knight to f3 opening is, well, you have this, and then you have this, which is King's Indian attack, okay? Unlike King's Indian defense, King's Indian attack is a system. It doesn't really matter what your opponent plays here. This is just the best line against it, but this is just the best line against it, but like, again, like, this exact setup is all you need to know, okay? Like, that is the benefit of playing the King's Indian attack, in that you get a very sharp attacking game even when you play a system like this. You do not get a positional game by any stretch as long as you play correctly. That said, there's another good way to play knight to f3. It's called the Réti Gambit, which is this. By the way, this is not called the Réti. Réti is a type of gambit, and this is the Réti opening. Okay, this is the Réti opening. This is called the Réti Gambit. Okay, so when you go like that, let's see if I remember. Let's see if I remember this. Was it this? Oh. No. What was it? Was it that, no? Ah, okay. So when you play the Réti Gambit like this, this is another good way to play the Réti Gambit. I mean the knight to f3 opening. The knight to f3 is called Zukertort opening, by the way, but like this is another good way to play the Zukertort opening. This is called the Réti Gambit, and the subline is called the Reversed Blumenfeld Gambit, which is also another good way to get an aggressive game with knight to f3. Okay, like, even if you want to play an e4 opening or a d4 opening later, you can always transpose. Okay, like, just play knight to f3. Just play knight to f3. You don't want to play e4, you don't want to play d4, you don't want to play c4. Knight to f3, okay? Knight to f3 is your opening, okay?
Go with 1 e4. At that point, the most common replies from black are e6, e5, d5, c6, and c5.
e4, d6 is also pretty common. It's called the Pierce defense. And, I mean, here's how I usually play against the pierce defense. And then it transposes into the King's Indian defense like this. But if you really want to know, the pierce defense is a little bit different from the King's Indian defense in that in the pierce defense you really have to gauge what your opponent is doing and then attack through that. Sometimes you attack on the king side, sometimes you attack on the queen side. But it's like, but other than that, you just have to like be mindful.
The main idea here is that you should already have a go-to plan for each of those defenses. If your opponent plays e5,
you don't really have to have a plan for all those defenses per se, because if you play the King's Indian attack, if you play the King's Indian attack, you don't need to know any of this stuff. Meanwhile, when you play as black, I just showed you earlier at the beginning, yes, you need to know a whole slew of theory just for the black side of things.
Go-to plan for each of those defenses. If your opponent plays e5, you could go into an Italian game. If they play d5, maybe switch to an exchange variation.
This is actually going to contradict one of his own tips here. He's going to say not to bring out your queen that early, and look what he's doing in the Scandinavian. Like, this is main line of Scandinavian, by the way. Like, yeah, again, it depends on the opening. He doesn't really know what he's talking about.
And so on. If they play something weird or a line you haven't studied, no problem. Just keep developing your pieces and...
Not really that simple. Just, if you really want to simplify, just play King's Indian attack.
Controlling the center. You don't need to memorize 20 theoretical moves to survive the opening.
Yes, you do.
All you really need to understand is the logic behind those moves, which can be summarized in 3 main points. Control the center, develop all pieces.
Oh my god, we already have a problem.
Control the center.
You don't need to control the center, okay? Okay, like... You only need to attack one of the flanks. What you really need to worry about is the flanks, not the center. You just have to get your pieces out into the game, and you just have to worry about attacking either flank, whether it be a king side or a queen side. Like, say for example, martial attack, the most textbook opening of all time. By the way, if you're one of my students and you played the Ruy Lopez, please be a homie, give them the marshal. You can already see with the queen, we've already established in the mainline marshal that we are going to be attacking on the king side. And the queen has to move. And then right here, you can clearly see an example of I don't know if you talked about it yet, but like, you don't always have to pay attention to what your opponent is doing. Sometimes you can get away with just developing your own pieces like this. Oh no. No, hold on. No, I don't think that's one. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Martial attack mainline Spassky variation. There you go. So you can clearly see that, like there is no center control here. There is no center control here. We're just fine. We're just launching a direct attack on the king side, and we're pointing all of our pieces there. Well, this knight is mostly a defense piece, so that's like you have to have something there to like defend your queen side a little bit. But that's besides the point. Maybe you need the dark square bishop for this exact same reason too. But like, likewise, on the other hand, you might have. Oh God. You might have an opening like this. And in this variation, in this particular opening right here, this is called the Sicilian Dragon variation. I don't really like to play the Sicilian defense, but whatever. In this case, you're attacking on the queen side, and your opponent is attacking on the king side. So you mostly try to work one of the flanks, but which flank you're going to be attacking on depends on the opening. But you don't necessarily need to control the center.
Develop all pieces.
Developing the pieces is not the only thing you need to worry about, okay? You need to develop, you need to not only develop your pieces, but you also need to bring all of your pieces to the flank you're trying to attack towards. That's your pieces do the main bulk of the attacking. I mean, you're also going to try to get your pawns involved, and they're going to like you're going to try to do a pawn storm as well, but that also depends on the opening. Like in the event, in like say for example King's Indian attack. In King's Indian attack, like one of the main ideas of King's Indian attack is to launch a pawn storm right in front of your king,
starting with light ones, and castle within the first 10 moves.
Castling in the first 10 moves, that's a little generous. I'll castle even sooner than that. What I would do here, I'll just go like this. And just castle immediately. I wouldn't just worry about castling within the first 10 moves. I would try to castle as early as you can. Also, there are some videos that also say that you should try to stop your opponent from castling. Just don't. Just focus on castling as early as you can, and just get all your pieces into the game. You don't really need to worry about what your opponent is doing.
Just following those 3 simple rules can get you into solid positions against most players. Now let's talk about what not to do in the opening. Don't move the same piece multiple times.
Again, it depends on the opening. Have you ever heard of the Elephant's defense? You're moving the same piece like 3 times, but that's like the main line of the Elephant's defense. It depends on the opening. Sometimes you really do move your same piece like multiple times. That's just how the opening works. You already saw with martial attack, like the main line. Like, yeah, I moved the same rook twice. It just depends on the opening. Also, what was I going to say?
Don't push too many pawns.
Yeah, don't push too many pawns. Again, it depends on the opening, like King's Indian attack, hello? Like, yeah, the whole point of it is to push pawns in front of your king.
Don't take the queen out too...
Don't bring your queen out too early. We already talked about this. Main line, you get your queen out early like this. There you go. There you go. It doesn't apply to everything.
Early, and don't make pointless moves.
And again, like it depends on what people think is a pointless move. It's a whole tin of worms. It's gonna devolve into like a whole sort of philosophy and what have you. It's just no.
Always ask yourself what your opponent is threatening. One of the most common mistakes is only focusing on your own moves with...
seriously, one of the most common mistakes? No, it's not. Like, you already saw the example with martial attack, right? Like, you already saw the example with King's Indian attack, like, especially with King's Indian attack, because, like, King's Indian attack is a system, which means the moves you're going to be playing is more or less the same for, like, the majority of your games. Like, whether you really need to worry about what your opponent is playing just depends on the opening, depends on the situation. There are so many variables as to whether it matches or not, okay? Okay, like there are so many cases where you really can get away with ignoring what your opponent is doing.
Without thinking about what your opponent is trying to do.
I mean, like, sometimes your opponent might threaten something in the middle of an opening, and even then, like, sometimes you actually get a brilliant move by ignoring that threat and just counterattacking. So like trying to figure out what your opponent is threatening, sometimes that is not the answer.
After every move your opponent makes, you should always ask yourself, what is the purpose of this move? Maybe they're setting up a pawn break, or maybe there's a tactical threat coming. If you can figure out their plan, you'll be way better prepared to deal with it and avoid nasty surprises.
Bruh.
So let's say your opponent opens with 1 e4, you reply with 1 e5. Both of you develop your pieces, and then they suddenly play queen to h5. If you don't stop and ask yourself, why did they bring the queen out so early? You might ignore the threat and you get hit with the scholar's mate. And obviously, you don't want that. Don't trade your bishop for a knight without a good reason. In chess, every piece is
Right.
Don't trade your bishop for a knight without...
Sometimes you do trade your bishop for a knight, okay? Here's one good example. Here's one good example already. Like, here. Blue mojito attack, right? Oh, no, that's not it. Blue mojito attack, right? The whole point of this opening, like, the beginning of it, you do trade that light square bishop for a knight. That's the whole point of the opening. And then what you do, you sacrifice that pawn, you get your knight out, you get your knights into the game. And then what's he gonna do? What's he gonna do? Really chess database. Let's look at that. Let's look at that, right? Oh god. Okay, he's gonna go here. This is gonna go here, and then yeah, you just ignore that, and you just develop like this. Anyway, point being, like the whole point of the blue mojito attack is, like, you form this structure, you get your knight here, you fianchetto, and you castle. It's a type of gambit that also works out like a system. Like I already did a video on it. You can go have a look yourself. Like, there are specific openings where you actually trade your bishop for a knight. Again, this type of stuff depends on the opening. Okay. Like, here's another good example. You know this opening. You know this opening. Like, yeah, the whole point of it is to, like, oh, Robin here. You know this opening, like this is one of the main lines. This is called the Samish variation. There's a Samish variation here too. Anyway, this is one of the main lines. Like, you can clearly tell. You can clearly tell. We traded a bishop for a knight. But, like, that's the whole point of the opening. So it really depends on the opening itself. It's really not that simple.
a good reason. In chess, every piece is given a standard value. Both a pair of knights and a pair of bishops are usually valued at 6 points, but it really depends on the position. In very closed positions, knights can be more effective because they can hop over pieces and create threats in tight spaces. That said, a lot of grandmasters agree that compared to a pair of knights or a mixed pair, having both bishops is basically like having an extra point. That's because bishops control more squares from a distance, and especially in the middle game, when the center starts to open up, they become a powerful weapon. So avoid trading off your bishop early in the game. Do it only if you're taking out a really strong piece sitting on a key square, if the position is super closed, or if the trade gives you an immediate tactical advantage. Master clock timing.
Okay. I get where this guy is coming from, but in a lot of cases, you can survive without the bishop pair. So sometimes you can get away with, you can get away with like trading away both your bishops. What you really, really need to focus on preserving are your rooks and your queens. Those are what you need to focus on preserving. Bishops are like, yeah, sometimes they really can help, but like most of the time you will end up trading your bishops away, and like you won't really need them if you already have your rooks and queens. You really need your rooks and queens.
Ever lost a winning position because you ran out of time? We all have. In chess, even the most brilliant idea is worthless if you don't have the time to play it. Whether you're in bullet, blitz, or rapid, bad clock management turns winning positions into heartbreaking losses.
This is one of the reasons why I tend to just stick to playing classical. I mean, sometimes you can't really do that, so I end up playing some rapid, like longer time control rapid, but like, yeah, this is one of the reasons why I don't play shorter time controls. Please don't play shorter time controls.
So how do you fix it? Start by not overthinking the obvious.
Well, in a lot of cases, you have to think a lot, okay? Like, okay, play your openings quickly, okay, that's kind of true.
Play your openings quickly. If you've studied your lines, trust them. Utilize
Yeah, utilize your opponent's turn to think about your strategy, okay, that's
opponent's turn to think about your strategy, and save the deep calculation for the middle game. Learn the coordinates. Every square on a chessboard has a specific coordinate. The files are labeled A through H, and the ranks go from 1 to 8. Pretty simple, right? But the vast majority of players underestimate how important it is to fully internalize this system. The goal is to recognize squares instantly, knowing.
I mean, I've gone pretty far without having to memorize all this stuff. Like, you don't really need to memorize coordinates. I'm more of a visual learner anyway. Like, you don't really need to memorize like coordinates. Even I struggle with that. Like,
that this square is C5 and that 1 is F4 is crucial because it boosts your spatial vision. Spatial vision is what helps you keep track of where all the
you can have spatial vision without knowing coordinates. I mean, without memorizing coordinates anyway.
Pieces are, and visualize potential threats. How many times have you lost a piece just because you forgot about the bishop?
That has more to do with pattern recognition and just having a good eye for all and just paying attention to detail and where pieces can move. That has nothing to do with that has nothing to do with memorizing coordinates.
Bishop sitting in the corner. That kind of mistake happens when your spatial skills aren't sharp yet, and your mental map of the board is still incomplete. A simple way to train this is by using the free coordinate trainer on Licious. Just pick one of the 2 training modes, click Start Training, and you're good to go. Counterattack and don't be passive. Let me give you an example so you can see exactly what I mean. Let's say your opponent tries a lever attack. In this position, the classic response is to play pawn to d5, and after he capture, you play knight to a5, attacking the bishop. But if you want to counterattack, I suggest bishop to c5. Now,
That's actually pretty good. That's actually pretty good. Yeah, I recommend this too.
the best move for your opponent is bishop takes f7, but most players will go for knight takes f7 because they'll be tempted by the fork on the queen and rook, and that's where your attack begins, with bishop takes f2. Now your opponent has a choice, capture or not. If they capture, you play knight takes a4, and suddenly they're in big trouble. They only have 6 legal moves and 4 of them lose instantly. For example, if the king goes to e3, you play queen to h4. If they grab the rook, he practically gets checkmate in a few moves. So after knight takes e4, the best move for white is king to g1. But
Actually, that's not true. Let's turn the engine on this time. As you can see here, the best move for white is actually this. But there's a reason why the best move is actually this instead of like king e3 is actually the best move for white when playing against the Traxler. And that's because there's some other variation of this line that white needs to know, which is this. Rook h4 is the only move that doesn't lose, but most people are not going to know that. I mean, well, they're probably going to know now, but whatever. They usually play this, which they're going to chase the queen like this, but now it's like, yeah, Mason 12. Yeah, bye-bye. So it's still pretty losing for white if they don't know what they're doing. But like we've already established, like, no, that is not the best move for white against the Traxler. King e3 is the correct move. Okay? Like, no, they got it wrong.
But even then, you go queen to g4, threatening mate. After pawn to g3, you take with the knight. When they recapture, you go queen takes g3, and now their only move is king to f1. From here, the plan is simple. Pin the knight to the king, push pawn to g5, then bishop to c3 check. And just like
even after that, the best you can do is just to draw by repetition. Like, don't be surprised if you don't win like this. Like, no. This is actually one of the horrible lines. This is actually one of the horrible lines of the Traxler. If you end up like this, you're just dead.
Like that, the dynamic has flipped. You're the one taking the initiative and going after their king. In chess, no one wins by just defending. To win, you have to force your opponent to make mistakes, and the best way to do that is by attacking. That doesn't mean throwing all your pieces forward with zero regard for defense, but being able to recognize the right moment to take the initiative and punish every inaccurate move of
And the problem with most grandmasters is that they'll mostly just focus on just playing for a draw, or just focus on like defending. Like it's just sickening. Like, even this guy already says it. Like even this guy says it right here. Like, yeah, you really need to get to attack. You really need to counterattack. You really need to like play for a win. You need to take risks.
The opponent. Going back to the earlier position, even if white decides not to capture your bishop, you can play queen to d7, and now white has to be super careful because you're threatening to trap their queen and win the game. Use the elimination method to calculate. In chess, there are basically two essential styles of play. There's the positional style, think Karpov, which is all about long-term strategy, improving your pieces, and controlling key squares. And then there's the tactical style, focused on sharp combinations and
That's not called tactical. That's not called tactical. That's called calculating.
forcing moves, more like Mikhail Tal. No matter what you're
Michal was not that much of a calculating player. If we really want to talk about a really calculating player, I'm far more likely to suggest Gukesh.
your style is. In every game, you'll have to calculate. Sometimes more, sometimes less.
You always have to calculate more and more.
Calculating means visualizing and analyzing a sequence of moves in your head to predict what might happen. To help navigate that complexity, Grandmaster Alexander Kotov, in his book, came up with the concept of candidate moves. Basically, the possible options you consider before you start calculating any variations. But, as you can imagine, if you're playing rapid or blitz games,
Checks, captures, attacks, pawn breaks. There's an entire video on it. I'm pretty sure our FIDE master already covered this in his how to calculate video. You might want to check that out.
This kind of deep thinking can eat up way too much time, especially if you're considering a bunch of candidate moves.
This is why you play classical.
That's why a much more practical method is the elimination approach. If you see that a candidate move is weak, you can eliminate it, focusing only on the stronger moves. That way, you'll simplify your calculation process and save a ton of time. Let's go through step by step how to calculate using this approach. It's white's move, and in this position, the candidate moves you'd be looking at are knight takes on c3, castling, or queen to d5 with check. A good rule of thumb is to always look at checks first. They're the easiest to calculate. Then look at captures. In this case, you've got three possible checks, but queen to d5 stands out as the best one because it not only gives check, but also attacks the bishop. Now you just have to figure out how your opponent might respond. He could play king to f8, then you take with check. He plays queen to a7, attacking your pawn. You check again, he plays knight to f6. You take the pawn. He pushes a 6, and so on. Try to calculate at least 4 moves deep, so you can stay a step ahead of your opponent. That's already a solid starting point. I know it might feel tricky at first, but with practice, this whole process will get way faster. Use the 20-40-40 rule. When it comes to getting better at chess, one of the most underrated parts is the middle game and the end game. A great way to structure your study time is by following the 20-40-40 rule. Spend 20% of your time on openings, 40% on the middle game, and 40% on end games.
You really need to know your theory, so I highly advise against this. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like middle game and end game stuff, you definitely need to study as well. Like I always say this. Like chess is 99% theory, but that final 1%, the most important 1%, is tactics. Okay. That being said, you really need to get a lot of that opening theory ingrained in you, so that by the time you get to the middle game and end game positions, you kind of know what you're doing. If you just study that much more on opening theory, you won't have that much of a problem.
And if you think about it, that totally makes sense. Most games are decided in the middle game or end game.
Again, this is not necessarily true. If you end most of the time, in most of the games I lost, I wound up losing, especially because I wound up in an opening that's basically slop, either that or I wound up in an opening that's not in my actual repertoire. Okay. It's I remember losing most of my games due to my opponent playing the Trompowsky. Like, that kind of thing really, really hurts. And this is another reason why you really need to know a lot of opening theory to avoid all that stuff. So that, like, yeah, this is just more than half the time, it looks like the games were decided in the middle or end game, but in truth, it usually happens because you just in unfamiliar territory, especially in the opening. The opening is like much more important than you think.
As for the middle game, some strategies that will help you win are: connect all the pieces so that no one is left isolated. Put your
You don't necessarily need to connect all your pieces per se, but like, you definitely need to connect the rooks. But you definitely need to make sure that at least most of your pieces are defended. If you end up in a position that you don't really know. You kind of have to keep everything defended. That's one good rule of thumb.
Pieces so that no one is left isolated. Put your rooks on open files. So that no one is left isolated. Put your rooks on open files. Try to trade your side pawns for central pawns.
Nah, I don't know about this one.
So you can control the center. If your opponent has an isolated pawn, block it with one of your pieces.
Again, there are so many ways to stop a pawn. You don't always have to block it. Blocking it with the knight, you just use up your knight that way. Another way to stop a pawn is to like just put the rook in front of it. Just put the rook in front of it like this. You don't have to put the knight there. Just guard with the rook. You can really stop the pawn like that.
Preferably with the knight. Don't create weak squares in your position. And if you're ahead, simplify the position by.
You shouldn't always simplify. In fact, I have to recommend that you don't simplify. In fact, when you actually get to the middle end games, like especially if you are at an advantage, like that's when you really need to preserve your pieces, because eventually you're going to have to use them to get your checkmating attack. So you need your pieces. So I wouldn't go with the idea of simplifying. Sometimes you have to, but in most cases I wouldn't simplify at all. I would just keep my pieces and just attack through that. And eventually, sometimes you will end up sacrificing pieces to get that attack going. But again, it depends on a lot of factors.
By trading pieces. Magnus Carlsen is a master at this. As soon as he takes the advantage, he practically forces you to change. The endgame is the stage of the game that begins when most of the pieces have already disappeared from the board. At that point, the approach changes completely from the opening or mid-game. It's no longer about developing pieces or attacking the king. It's often just about activating the king and promoting a pawn.
Actually, it does end up being about checkmating too.
Play this phase well, it's essential to know some typical patterns, like queen versus pawn, rook endgames, stalemate situations, because recognizing these can dramatically increase your chances of winning. And if you recognize them right away, you'll play with confidence and accuracy. If you want to practice, chess.com has puzzles made specifically to help you improve in this part of the game. Let me know in the comments what your rating goal is, and see you next time.
Again, so many things are wrong with this video.